I visited the State Institution for the Mentally Retarded, and I think particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit, and that the children live in filth, that many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower. There's very little future for the children or for those who are in these institutions. Both need a tremendous overhauling. I'm not saying that those who are the attendants there or the ones that run the institution are at fault. I think all of us are at fault. And I think it's just it's long overdue that something be done about it.
It's been more than 6 years since Robert Kennedy walked out of one of the wards here at Willowbrook and told newsmen of the horror he'd seen inside. He pleaded then for an overhaul of a system that allowed retarded children to live in a snake pit. But that was way back in 1965, and somehow we'd all forgotten. I first heard of this big place with the pretty-sounding name because of a call I received from a member of the Willowbrook staff, a Dr. Michael Wilkins. The doctor told me he'd just been fired because he'd been urging parents with children in one of the buildings, building number 6, to organize so they could more effectively demand improved conditions for their children. The doctor invited me to see the conditions he was talking about, so unannounced and unexpected by the school administration, we toured building number 6. The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible. There was one attendant for perhaps 50 severely and profoundly retarded children, lying on the floor naked and smeared with their own feces. They were making a pitiful sound, a kind of mournful wail that it's impossible for me to forget. This is what it looked like, this is what it sounded like, but how can I tell you about the way it smelled? It smelled of filth, it smelled of disease, and it smelled of death. We've just seen something that's probably the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. Is that typical of ward life?
Yes, there are 5,300 patients at Willowbrook, which is the largest institution for the mentally retarded in the world. The ones that we saw were the most severely and profoundly retarded. There are thousands there like that, not going to school, sitting on the ward all day, not being talked to by anyone.
My name is Kevin Christman. As the president of the self-advocacy group of CPNSL, I represent many individuals with disabilities. The vice president of our group, Charlie Fleisch, will now share some of our fears.
The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Willowbrook did not open in 1947 as a snake pit. It was a home and therapeutic setting for children and adults with severe disabilities. It was a place where residents could thrive and grow. Unfortunately, budget cuts began. Staff numbers were depleted and the remaining staff were demoralized. The Willowbrook staffing ratios ultimately dropped to 50-1. Willowbrook finally closed after decades of abuses and scandals. We live in fear of another Willowbrook. We are on a slippery slope. The recently enacted New York State budget for 2019 to 20 did not have a cost of living adjustment for any agencies that provide services for people with disabilities. These agencies have had one cost of living increase at 0.2%, yes 0.2%, in 9 years. 40 years of success is being dismantled. We live in a dangerous reality. The lack of adequate funding to recruit and retain quality staff is eroding the ability to provide quality care. Do we need a tragedy to occur to force New York State to recognize that our workforce crisis is very real? Do we need people to die before necessary funds are allocated? Please remember Willowbrook. Our lives depend on it.